Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the 1111 Matrix Code Revealed. As always, I'm your host, Garrett King. In today's video, folks, I want to show you this kind of cool little nugget of code that I have found in, once again, Genesis. But it's in the first 3 verses. And it deals mainly with the number, not even mainly. I mean, it does deal with the number 37, but in sort of a different way. So as we all know, the number 37 is just rife throughout the Torah. And it's very prevalent in the 1111 matrix code. We know that those numbers are going up and down by the number 37. So what I've done is, because I'm just, a curious guy, I wanted to take the number 37 and sort of break it apart. And instead of looking at it as a whole, let's look at the number 3 and the number 7. So I went to the first verse and I counted over from the very beginning to the 3rd letter, and then I went to the 7th letter. Then I went to the next verse and did the same thing. Took the 3rd and 7th letter, went to the 3rd verse, did the same thing, so on and so forth. I continued on to the 4th, 5th, and 6th verse, but after the 3rd verse, everything sort of fell apart. So this little nugget of code is contained within the first 3 verses. And what's revealed is sort of a signature, if you will. And you'll see what I'm talking about here in just a second. So I find this incredibly fascinating because of how these pieces start to connect. And you'll see what I'm talking about again here in just a moment. But this really calls back to a spirit communication that I did with my father back in 2020, which I'll talk more about here in just a few moments. So yeah, it's just very interesting how all these things kind of are just woven and connecting themselves in a very bizarre way. And as I say time and time again, the way these things connect, it's beyond coincidence. It's too coincidental to be a coincidence anymore. There is clearly a definite purpose and reason that all this information is coming together the way that it is. And, I still don't clearly understand 1,000%, or even 100% at the, my role in it, other than to just present the information to you guys. So, yeah. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started here. Let's move over to Windows. And so clearly what you're looking at here on the screen is I have the JLA Tanakh program opened up, and I have Google Translate opened up. Now, this little nugget of code is, again, based on the number 37, but the number is broken apart into 2 separate numbers, 3, 7. So what I did was I came here to Genesis 1:1 and just simply counted over 3. So 1, 2, 3. The 3rd letter is Aleph. All right. So I'm just going to type that in over here into the translator. And then we're going to go to the 7th letter. So 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The 7th letter is Bet. Now, this in of itself is extraordinary. I've talked about this before, probably briefly, but Aleph and Bet, the translation, is father. Okay. And what's interesting about this is, again, I'm going to say it out loud, the letter names Aleph and Bet. It sounds like alphabet. This is where we get the word for alphabet. And it's interesting because it almost seems to be a encoded message all of its own, that the Father, okay, the God, the Father, the one and only, is the creator of the alphabet, which the first verse tells us this information already. Simply because we know that this, let's see here. Where in the hell's my mouse? Okay, so I got to explain this to you guys. I got a huge 43-inch TV, 4K TV to use as a monitor. And it's massive. That's what when I keep looking up, that's what I'm looking at, is this big giant ass screen. But my mouse is so tiny that it just disappears. I have no idea where it's at half the time. So anyway, we know that the creator created the alphabet, and that's the first thing that was created. It's encoded, but it's there, okay? So we know that based on this word right here, Aleph and Tav, okay? Aleph is the first letter of the alphabet. Tav is the last letter of the alphabet, which seems to encompass everything in between, okay? It's basically, if it was the English alphabet, it would be A through Z, okay? So when this first verse says, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, well, actually, in the beginning, God created the alphabet first. The alphabet, which makes up this entire book and this entire code. Because as we also know, every letter has a number associated with it, which is, again, where we get Gematria. Okay, so let's go to the second verse. So we're going to go to the third letter, which is Aleph again. So let's put a space here. And again. Okay. All right. And then the seventh letter is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it's right here. It's Yud. Okay. Going to type that in. And then we're going to go to verse 3, which starts right here. We're going to count over. And what do you know? We have Aleph a third time. So let's go there. And then the seventh letter is this one right here. It's Lamed. And as you can see, the translation is Father El. Okay, E-L. Now, this is short for Elohim. That's what I'm saying when I tell you that this is sort of a signature. Father El. Now, the right here in verse 1, actually move over this direction, and it wasn't there, it's right here. This word right here is Elohim. Now, I started looking at this word, and I began to kind of break it apart, and it's very interesting what's going on here. When you see a Yud and a Mem, that's what this letter is here, the last letter, at the end of a word, that word becomes plural, okay? We can demonstrate that by looking at the word for man. So we know man is Aleph, Dalet, and Mem. Now, I've talked about this before. The literal translation of this is a person. It's not a man, it's a person. And as I've said before, it's made up of the letters Aleph, Dalet, and Mem, A-D-M. It's where we get the name Adam. Now, if I was to apply a Yud and a Mem to the end of this, it will change it to people, okay? It's now plural. So we had a person, and now we have people. Now, just by doing this right here, this letter is mem, and this letter's mem. Mem, this first one, should actually be this. It's the same letter, but there's 5 letters in the Hebrew alphabet that when they appear at the end of a word, they change shape. I've talked about this before. Mem is one of those letters. Okay, so if it appears in the middle of a word, it's open, as you see here. It's open at the bottom. When it appears at the end of a word, it's closed. Okay, as you can see, the translation did not change because it's the exact same letter. Now, with that being said, let's move that back and change this back to, now as you can see, it says ADM, but because mem is now, because I've gotten rid of the other letters there, and this mem is now at the end of the word, it needs to take the other shape, okay, because it's at the end. So now it goes back to a person. Now, if we're adding yud and mem at the end of a word and it's making it plural, then why are we looking at Elohim as being singular? Okay. This question's come up before, not by me, by many, many other people. This word is plural. But again, we look at it as singular. And that makes no sense. Now, El, Aleph, and Lamed, those 2 letters together simply translate to deity. That's what that means. The word El means deity. Now, as I've demonstrated before or talked about, the letter He, which is this middle letter right here, that letter in of itself means God. Okay? And we can see that. Let's just come over here and just type in He. And as you can see, the translation is God. Okay? But when that letter appears at the beginning of a word, it becomes the. So this, where it says a person, if we apply, I'm just going to cut it and paste it. If we put it in the front of the word, now it becomes the person. Okay, it's no longer a person, it's the person. And when the Bible actually is using the name Adam, it's strangely using this spelling. Okay, I've talked about this before. So, what about the last 2 letters? We know that when applied at the end of a word, it makes it plural, but what about just those 2 letters by themselves? What do they mean? Now, this is interesting. Let's hit return, and let's just type in Yud and Mem. It translates to sea, S-E-A. Now, what I find incredibly interesting about this is when you break that word apart like that, then it should technically be saying deity of the sea. Okay? Deity of the sea. Now, the reason I find that so interesting, especially the last part, the sea, and as I said, if you put a hey in front of this, as it is in the actual word for Elohim, it becomes the sea. Okay? The only thing that's missing is Lamed and Aleph, which would make the whole entire word Elohim. But again, the reason this is interesting to me is when I did a spirit communication with my father back in 2020, it was in January, I think, when I recorded this. I asked my father if he could tell me where he was. And the response came through, it was whispered, kind of whispered at the beginning. You guys will get to hear it. I'm going to actually take the video that I made for my mom and my brother. Now, these videos that I'm going to show you or put into this video were never really meant for public consumption. I was just making them for my mom and my brother just to demonstrate that I felt like I was talking to my father. So, again, you'll get to hear these. But when I asked my father, can you tell me where you are? The response came through, and the very first portion of it was whispered, and then the words, the sea, are much louder. But what he said was, we are by the sea. Which, I mean, think about it. Was that a way of him saying that we are by the Creator? We are by the sea. Now, when I first talked to my brother about this and sent him the video, his initial thought was he said this makes him think about, when it talks about the waters above and the waters below. And I said, true. But I said, for me, it makes me think of also a sea of stars based on something else that my dad said during a couple of these sessions, which was, and I've talked about this before. So I asked him to tell me where he was. He said, we are by the sea. And the reason he said we is because I also asked him if he was with his mom and his dad, and he said yes. So he was saying that they were all by the sea. But when I asked him, what do you do there? The response was, we build them. Now it says it twice, we build them, and it's whispered. And then the third time, it just says, we build. And the word build is much louder. Okay. And again, I'm going to edit those videos into this one so you'll get to see and hear exactly the session that was recorded. Now, when I went back and asked him, can you tell me what it is you build? The response was was odd. I've talked about this before as well. It's still odd to me, but he said or responded with spaceship hull. Okay, Hull. And you'll hear me in the recording literally say, Dad, did you just say spaceship? And it's funny. His response was kind of like sort of a joking, playing with me sort of answer. Because he says, possibly. Which I thought was kind of interesting. And then a little ways later, and I didn't find this until much later, when I recorded these sessions, I record to a Zoom H6, or I did at the time. I now have a Zoom H8. But the reason I record to that device is because it allows me to record to different channels. And I wanted my voice recording to one channel, and I wanted the spirit voices recording to their own channel. The reason is, if I was recording everything to one channel and I started to say something and they spoke at the same time, there would be no way for me to isolate what they were saying especially if it was not very clear. Okay. So I wanted to be able to isolate their recording, their voices, so that I could just listen very clearly without any sort of interruptions or without me speaking on top of it or them speaking on top of me or whatever. But when I asked him, can you tell me what it is you build? And then I said, and where are you building this? And as I'm asking that question, this voice came through. And again, had I not recorded it the way that I did, I would never have known what it said because I was talking. But because I did record it to two separate tracks, I could isolate that voice. And the response was, "We are not alone." Now, that could be taken multiple different ways. It could have been taken as we are not alone, as if he's saying that there's other people present with him, possibly monitoring what it is that he's answering and saying to me, or he could be talking about we are not alone in the universe. Which, I don't know. I struggle with this because I do have this very strong feeling that he was being monitored with what he was saying, because I had asked him, "Can you tell me why I keep seeing the number 1111?" Now, his first response was, "What is it?" And I kind of took that as a way of him, I don't know, kind of buying time, like he's just kind of trying to give the impression that he doesn't know. So he's asking, "What is it?" But when I asked him, "Is it important?" he replied, "Might." Just the word "might," as though it might be important. But then the weirdest thing happened. There was these, and I've talked about this before, so I'm sorry for those who've heard this story already, but there was two other voices that came in, and one of them said, "You can't answer that." And the other one said, "You can't tell him." And then the last thing that I heard was, "I can't say." Now, from that moment forward, I've been unable to connect with my dad at all. So, unless he has found a way to deliver this information, okay? Because I've really sort of wondered if this information about this whole code and breaking all this apart, if the information it isn't somehow coming from him. Because let's reflect back. When I first started seeing the number 333, it stopped in the month of November, the month that my father passed away. Different year. My dad passed away in 2007. This was in 2009. But it stopped when I had a dream that he was coming out of the closet to see me. Okay. Now, when I started seeing the number 1111, of course, this was again after I got married, legally changed my name to King. And then I went to bed that night, and then that's, I closed my eyes to fall asleep. And within just a matter of seconds, I was seeing that bright white light shining in my face. And it was brought up by a coworker that they thought that maybe someone was trying to come visit me from the other side. Now, again, was that my dad? I don't know. But that started the whole thing. So, and then just to see this sort of code, we get Father and Father L. Now, and the whole part of this, his response about being by the sea and the last two letters of Elohim is C. And then the last three letters is the sea. And then we know the fact that L means deity, and it's deity of the sea. So you can see where I'm making these connections. Now, what's also interesting is the first 3 verses of Genesis. And this little nugget of code ends with verse 3, okay? Which is talking about, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. Now, as I've demonstrated in the last video, the word light has the value of 999. Now, you're probably asking, well, what's the connection? Well, the value of Father L is 999, the same as the light. So that's just incredibly interesting to me. Now, to demonstrate this, let's go ahead and open up this program here, and let's look at the Gematria calculator. Okay, so I'm going to type in the same letters that I have here in this first line here. So it's Aleph. Why aren't you typing? Come on. What is going on here? Why won't you type? Okay. That was weird. Okay, so let's just close this whole thing out. Let's close this out too. Okay. And let's reopen this thing. Sorry, folks. Don't like when things don't work correctly. Okay. All right. Gematria calculator. Here we go. Now, I have set this program up to include the 1111 matrix code Gematria that, I call the matrix Gematria. So, okay, let's see if this, okay. I think it's going to work now. Okay, so it's Aleph and Bet. And then we're going to hit space. And then it's Aleph. Well, it didn't put a space there. Why not? Come on. Work with me here. Okay, and then Aleph and Yud. Come back here, space, and then Aleph and Lamed. Okay, so I don't know how clearly this is going to show up on your guys' screen. I can't enlarge this, unfortunately, but it's Aleph, Bet, Aleph, Yud, Aleph, Lamed, okay? The same as I have here. But as you can see, hopefully, the value is 999. Now, the word for light is Aleph, Vav, and Resh. And as you can see, it's 999 as well. And just to prove that it is the word light, Aleph, Vav, and Resh. It's right here. And you can see the translation is light. So again, it's just kind of fascinating to me that this little nugget of code, this Father L, this sort of signature, if you will, within the first 3 verses has the same value of light. And that's what the first 3 verses are talking about. The beginning of the heavens and the earth and the creation of light. Yeah, very cool. Now, I'm still puzzled by this whole thing about the sea. Because let's go back to something from a while back. Now, some of you will recall, if you've been around for a while, that I did this experiment wherein I was taking the 1111 matrix code numbers, the beginning and the end portions, and I was applying them to the Torah by changing the width, okay, of the Torah. So the first number is 371074. So I took the number 37 and changed the width of the Torah to 37. Then I counted over 11 and then down 11 and selected that letter. Okay. Then the next number was 74, did the same thing, so on and so forth. And every letter that I selected, it seemed to produce this story or message. I don't know what we want to call it. But the first one was what I called the surface message. Now, this is the one that reads, there is a new approach, and that as it should be, a new version of the book will be released. As my sons and daughters, I will save you. At the same time, I will be with you in the future. It will be clear that you will be able to see how the sun is shining, and the sun is shining. When the light shines in the light of my creation, a sign will be thrown here carrying a flame, and it will rise to its glory. I am coming to the end of my life, and I am looking forward to seeing you again. This is why the children of God are living in the land of the Father. From the words of the Lord, they came from the fire to the truth of the sea. Okay? Truth of the sea. Now, what's even more interesting about this word Elohim, let's go ahead and add Aleph and Lamed. Whoops. Added it to the wrong thing. Okay, so we have God. Now, look what happens when we get rid of the mem at the end. We get the word divine. Okay? And then let's get rid of yud. We have goddess. Okay? Aleph, Lamed, and Hey. It gives us the word goddess. Now think back, if you will, to the presentation I did for the Bible code that Michael Drosnin had originally found. Now, he found a portion where it said, what was it? The firstborn father came in a vehicle or something to that effect. Now, I took that whole area that he was searching and I expanded upon that, and I found so much more in that area. It talked about how the firstborn father came. He came in a vehicle. There was DNA in the vehicle. It went on and talked about Asherah, who was mother in the day. Okay. Now, think about that. We had the firstborn father and Asherah, okay, who was supposedly God's wife. Now, with that in mind, and we're seeing the word goddess here, made up of the first three letters of Elohim. Think about what it says in the Bible when God creates man. He says, let us make man in our image, which is plural, talking about more than one. And when you think of the word Elohim is also plural, it's talking about more than one God or more than one deity. Now, this calls into question this whole thing about, were we seated on this planet by a being from somewhere else? Now, if you recall that code, the firstborn father code, it talked about how he is a foreigner and we are not, because he came from somewhere else. We were born here. And again, the question is, how? Were we brought here in like a test tube, the DNA, to create us? Because remember, that code talked about DNA in a vehicle. And I've said this before. Either he brought DNA with him or he was the DNA in the vehicle. But apparently he didn't come alone. Asherah was there as well. So they could have been the first father and mother. Now, the Bible tells us it's Adam and Eve. Don't know. But I just find all of this interesting, these connections. And the reason that this is kind of, I think, maybe coming to light now, is the whole thing with the congressional committee meeting that they had over UAPs, and which seems to be interesting that that's happening now in this time. I mean, clearly we've known for a very long time. Many of us have believed that this planet's being visited. Now, the government has never really wanted to come forth and say that, but it feels like that's what they're gearing up to do, is talk about this. And I recall reading in Michael Drosnin's book, can't remember if it was the second or third Bible code book, or maybe it was even the first. Hell, I don't remember. But he questioned if there was a way to kind of break the whole entire Bible code, like getting caught up in my words here. I'm trying to think of how I'm trying to word this. If there was some kind of thing, a tool of some sort that would reveal the code in its entirety. Okay. And he kind of toyed with this idea that there was an obelisk buried in the Dead Sea. And that either encoded on this obelisk or whatever was the information that would completely unlock the entire Bible code. Who knows? Who knows if it's there or not? I don't know. My thought, and again, this is just a thought. I have obviously no way of knowing this. These are just ideas, things that, are kind of coming to me. I could be so far off base. Who knows? But my thought is, let's just say that the firstborn father is a being from somewhere else. Okay. And this being and his wife, Asherah, came to this planet in some kind of vehicle. What if that vehicle is what's buried at the bottom of the Dead Sea? And what if that knowledge is the truth from that inner or that first surface message, when it said, let's go back, from the words of the Lord, they came from the fire to the truth of the sea. In other words, the truth of how we came to be here could possibly be buried at the bottom of the Dead Sea. If they came in a craft and it crashed, maybe it crashed there. And this is what's interesting, is at one time, the Dead Sea was a very lush valley. And then it was flooded with water. The question's why? Is there something there that they wanted to cover up? Such as a vehicle. The vehicle that brought them here. Don't know. So, yeah. you can kind of see where my mind's going with this stuff. Trying to, again, make sense of it. It was just a very odd sort of little nugget of code, finding this sort of signature, Father L, in the first 3 verses, and it having the same value using the matrix gematria as the word light, which, again, we have to, this is clearly a code, and all codes are meant to be deciphered. Okay. If they weren't, why encode it in the first place? But light is like another way of opening our eyes to the things that are hidden. And this code is definitely hidden. But it's being revealed. And again, why now? Why this time period? Obviously, it took having computers to really be able to dig into it. The code's been known to be there for an incredibly long time, way before computers ever existed. But only with the onset of having computers were we able to break this code apart. But it's not completely there yet. Okay. We need this sort of key. There's some kind of key. That's what Michael Drosnin was talking about. And that's the word I was looking for earlier. Some sort of key to unlock this entire thing. And what if that key is in this ship, this vehicle that could possibly be buried at the bottom of the Dead Sea? Don't know. Now, what's interesting is the Dead Sea, is drying up. And again, why? What's going to be revealed there? Don't know. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and end this video here. But before the video completely ends, you're going to see the videos that I made for my mom and my brother with the conversation with my dad. Now, I do want to point something out for those that, haven't been here since the beginning. In one of the videos, you will hear my dad refer to me as Todd. Todd is my middle name. Now, that was one of the indicators that really drove it home for me that I was, in fact, speaking with my father. Because my parents, up until, sometimes my mom still calls me Todd, my brother as well. But I went by the name Todd ever since I was just a kid, all the way up until I think it was the beginning of high school. And at the beginning of high school is when I started going by my first name, Garrick. So I think one of the reasons that I didn't go by that especially in grade school when I was really, really young, is because I didn't know how to spell Garrick. It's pretty bad when you don't know how to spell your own name. But I can remember that. I can remember not being able to know how to spell it. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But again, he calls me Todd. So when you hear him say Todd, don't be surprised, because that is my middle name. So Garrick Todd King. But yeah, that was just one of the indicators that really drove it home that I was speaking to him. He was calling me by the name that he always called me when he was alive. And yeah, it just was incredible. So yeah, you'll hear those, you'll see those. The way that I did these videos is I have the words showing up on the screen so that my brother and my mom could see them. And again, these videos were never made for public consumption. It was made for them. And it's only been since all of this stuff has started unraveling that I've talked about it and made it more sort of a public thing. But yeah, so hopefully you'll find it interesting. We'll love to hear what you guys think in the comments. This is such an exciting time, a scary time, and it's just interesting, this stuff that's coming through in this code. So, okay. So until next time, enjoy these sessions that I did with my father, and we'll talk again soon. Bye-bye. Dad, can you say your father's name? Are you with your father right now? Yes. Is your mother there as well? Hey, Dad, can you say your mom's name? Will you say your mom's name? Hey, Dad, how many people are with you? Hey, Dad, can you tell me what it's like where you are? Good? It's good? Yes. Hey, Dad, do you like it where you are? It sounded just like he said, uh-huh. Can you tell me if you're in a building somewhere? Are you outside? What do you do there? Can you tell me what you do there? Yes? I hear a lot of voices coming through. Are you able to hear me clearly? Did you hear me very clearly? Yes. Dad, are you able to tell me what it is that you build? Dad, did you say spaceship?
No, it's negative.
Dad, are you building some kind of spaceship? Yeah, you build. What do you build? And where are you building this? Do you know why I keep seeing 1111? Is it important?